Alright, hey guys, welcome to the video. If you're new here, my name's Curtis, and today we're going to be talking about the note of iris or orris. So iris is a note that took me a very long time to become accustomed to, and the reason for that is because it comes off quite powdery and even slightly vegetal in fragrances. But basically, the way they produce that note is from the iris flower. They take the root of that flower, and it takes a long time to process that to be able to use it in perfumery. But yeah, this is a note that over time I've started to become more and more accustomed to, and actually I quite enjoy it now in fragrance, but in moderation. If the fragrances come off too powdery, then I still push a bit away from it, but I've really started to enjoy the note. So yeah, I've gone through my collection. I've chosen 5 fragrances that contain the note of iris or orris. So if you're curious to hear my thoughts and opinions on these fragrances, then let's go. First up, from the house of Parfums Dusita, we have Montri. Man, so this one is just a very polished, opulent, and elegant rose oud fragrance. You have a very unique dried fruit accord, which comes off quite spicy, and this is something that the perfumer created just for this fragrance. In the mid, you get some very lush kind of roses that start to push forward along with some orris. And that orris is kind of, like I said, bringing a bit of like that powdery-like effect. And then in the dry down, you have some oud that's starting to push forward that brings a lot of depth and character to this fragrance. And that oud there's a slight bit of funk there, but overall it's quite pleasant. It doesn't really go down that like barnyardy or skanky type of oud. You know, there is a tinge of funk there, but it is quite pleasant overall. But this is a very kind of like, if you think like traditional French perfumery, this is basically what you get right here. This is just very classy and elegant, and you know, it works perfectly like if you're going to kind of like an upscale restaurant or maybe some kind of formal event. This fragrance works perfectly for that. And in terms of seasonality with this fragrance, it fits really well in the fall, winter, and springtime. Summer, it might get a bit cloying, I'm not sure. I think here in Japan, since we have very humid weather, this would come off extremely cloying. So I'll probably stay away from this fragrance in the summertime, but the fall, winter, and spring, this fragrance will work perfectly. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Montri by Parfums Dusita. All right, next up, from the house of Fusciuni, we have Viole, Nere. All right, so this fragrance is all about iris, violet, earthiness, and a bit of darkness. And this is one of those fragrances that it is quite powdery, and it almost gives you kind of like makeup-like vibes. But like I mentioned, darkness. This fragrance, in reference to darkness, it has a very kind of melancholy type of vibe to it. So I typically reach for a fragrance like this, like when it's raining out, dark skies. I don't know, for some reason, it almost evokes sadness. And I'm not sure if that's what Fusciuni was going for, but if that's what he was going for in this fragrance, he definitely hit it right on the head. But for me, yeah, this fragrance kind of evokes sadness, and it doesn't, you know, when I'm reaching for a fragrance like this, it doesn't make me sad to wear it. It's a very enjoyable wearing experience, but it's one that, you know, it has such an artistic quality to it, and I can feel the emotion in this fragrance. And that's one thing that Fusciuni is extremely good at in the creations that they make from that house. They are great at creating fragrances that carry emotion, can take you on a journey. And this is what this fragrance does for me. I also have another fragrance by this house called Little Song, which basically does the same thing. You know, creates a different emotion, not necessarily the emotion of like melancholy or kind of sadness, but so this is a more artisanal type of brand in a way. I mean, if you're looking for a fragrance that's going to bring you heavy compliments, compliment getter, kind of beast mode fragrance, this is not it. In terms of performance, it's kind of moderate sillage, moderate projection off my skin, but I have heard others say that they're quite disappointed with the performance of this fragrance. For me, you know, I get decent, like I said, just moderate sillage, moderate performance, and that's all I really need from a fragrance like this. I feel like if a fragrance like this and was beast mode, it would be extremely overwhelming. This is quite powdery and it does come off quite makeup-y. So, you know, if you're not a fan of those types of fragrances, then you might want to steer clear of this one. But I really appreciate the artistic quality in this fragrance. And yeah, the House of Mayo Fusciuni is a house that's extremely underrated. But I feel like they're a house that's definitely on the come up. And so I hope more people can really start to experience the pure artistry that they create at that house. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Viole Nere by Mayo Fusciuni. Next up from the house of BDK, we have Vanille Leather. So this one's a vanillic, slightly powdery bomb, in my opinion. It's a very, very pleasant wear. And however, I feel like the name's slightly misleading because it says Vanille Leather, but on my skin, I don't really pick up on the leather so much, to be honest. It's basically that vanilla, a bit of woods, and that orris that are pushing forward, and you definitely get that violet leaf as well. So a lot of times too, whenever orris or iris is used in fragrance, it's combined with violet leaf, and so that's just almost kind of you know, making that powderiness a bit more present, in my opinion. Violet leaf can also come off slightly powdery. But yeah, this is a gorgeous wear, and it's I think it's one of the underrated fragrances from the house of BDK. You don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about this one, but yeah, this is a great one for sure. And this one was created by one of my favorite perfumers, Dominique Ropion. Yeah, he's just done masterful work here. Anytime he works with florals, he just does a phenomenal job, and he's done a great one here. This one actually might be my fragrance of the day. I'm considering what I'm gonna wear today, and so yeah, I might actually go with this one. But this is a great one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Vanille Leather by BDK. Next up from the house of Amouage, we have Reflection Man. Man, this one just smells very clean, unique. It's quite inviting and just very exquisite. You know, this one has received quite a bit of hype in the fragrance community, and you know, rightfully so. This is a very versatile fragrance. I mean, you can wear this one to the office, to formal or casual events, day, night. I mean, it basically does everything. This one, you know, is fresh and clean. It does have that kind of powdery-like effect though. In here, you do have that bit of orris that definitely is, you know, it's in here. You can definitely tell it's there. And I remember the first time I smelled this fragrance, that almost kind of turned me off because my nose wasn't accustomed to orris or iris at that point. So I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But over time and kind of spending a bit of time with this fragrance, I really have begun to love it. You know, it's just, and if you're someone who's just starting to get into the house of Amouage or kind of like Middle Eastern style perfumery, then this is definitely one I feel like would be a good one to start with. For that house of Amouage specifically, you know, some of their fragrances can, you know, be a little challenging if your nose isn't accustomed to certain notes, but I feel like this is an easy one to start with for sure. But yeah, this is a great one. If you're just looking to smell fresh and clean while also being unique, then definitely check this fragrance out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Reflection Man by Amouage. And finally, from the house of Nishane, we have 100 Silent Ways. All right, so this one's just a fruity floral combination. The orris gives this fragrance a slight dustiness, while the woods really help to kind of warm this fragrance up a bit. This is one that kind of, you know, in the niche kind of world, this one gets a bit of backlash for smelling slightly designer-ish, but you know, I don't think that it does. Yeah, it smells very, very pleasant, but you know, this fragrance does have a lot of depth and character to it. And one thing that I do like to do with this fragrance is, I feel like this one is unisex, but it pushes more to the feminine side. So when I want to add a touch of masculinity to this fragrance, I tend to layer this one up with Hachivat. So I'll put 100 Silent Ways down first, do about 3 sprays, and then I'll layer Hachivat over the top of it. So I'll do about maybe 4 sprays of Hachivat, because this fragrance tends to, on my skin, this fragrance tends to be the dominant fragrance. So that's why I put it down first, and it easily overpowers Hachivat on my skin. I think, everybody's experience is different. So, I think when you start to layer fragrances, you really kind of it's a bit of trial and error, and you really have to kind of test things out to see what works for your own skin chemistry and for, the performance of fragrances. Fragrances perform differently on everybody's skin, and also giving the environment and weather that you're in as well. So you have to take all that into consideration when you're layering fragrances. But for me, I always lay down 100 Silent Ways first as the base, then I put Hachibat over the top, but it is quite intoxicating, that combination. I do like the woody presence in this fragrance, and as you start to push forward into the dry down, you do get quite a heavy dose of vanilla that starts to push forward. But yeah, it is quite nice, and it's definitely an enjoyable wear for sure. So if you can, get yourself a sample of 100 Silent Ways by Nishane. All right, you guys, so that's all I have for you for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content. And let me know down in the comment section, what are some fragrances that you have in your collection that contain the note of iris or orris? I'd love to hear about them. Well, I hope you guys are staying healthy and well, and I'll see you in the next video.